Carlsbad, New Mexico, a town where the loudest sound most nights is the wind brushing over the desert floor. But one March evening in 1988, two people, Ricardo Mendoza and Esperanza Delgado, vanished from their home. No forced entry, no broken glass. Dinner was still hot on the table. For 22 years there was nothing. No leads, no bodies. Just questions buried deeper than the desert sand. Until a group of conservation workers stumbled upon something in a swamp that had no business being there. A body wrapped in industrial tarp, half submerged in mud and preserved by time and silence. Before we unravel this astonishing case, like this video, subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss stories that demand to be told. A quiet night in Carlsbad, March 15, 1988. Carlsbad woke to a sandstorm. Thick winds coated the streets and made visibility near zero. That same evening, Ricardo Mendoza, a 40-year-old mechanic, closed his garage early. His wife, 29-year-old Esperanza, had already returned home from her shift as a local elementary school teacher. They were supposed to drive to Albuquerque the next morning to visit Esperanza's sister, Carmen. Bags were packed, hotel reserved. Dinner was served, but never eaten. Ricardo's Ford pickup was parked in the garage. Esperanza's purse was on the dining table. The dinner table was set for two. But Ricardo and Esperanza gone. A family's panic. When Carmen didn't hear from her sister by Sunday, she panicked. She called. No answer. She drove to Carlsbad. Still nothing. On March 18th, Deputy Miguel Santos was sent to do a wellness check. There were no signs of a break-in, no ransacked rooms, no screams had been heard, but there was one thing. A faint, dark stain on the kitchen floor. Scrubbed, but not invisible. Their IDs, wallets, and keys were untouched. Their dog, usually vocal, was eerily quiet. Something was deeply wrong. The sheriff launched an investigation, but with no witnesses, no evidence of foul play, and no bodies, the case grew cold. Fast. The perfect couple? Not quite. At first glance, the Mendozas seemed like the perfect couple. Hard-working, respected, well-liked, but cracks soon appeared. Neighbors had heard shouting. Esperanza's co-workers recalled her showing up with bruises. Ricardo's brother admitted that he had a drinking problem and had become increasingly paranoid. The deeper police dug, the more complex the story became. Esperanza had recently formed a close friendship with David Morales, a gym teacher at her school. And David? He vanished just 2 weeks after the Mendozas. At first, people assumed he'd moved to California, as he told his colleagues. But investigators found his apartment abandoned, his phone disconnected, his belongings still inside. He hadn't moved. He'd disappeared. 3 missing, 0 answers. Detective Luis Ramirez believed this wasn't a coincidence. He theorized that Ricardo may have discovered the affair and snapped, killing Esperanza and David before disappearing or taking his own life. But there were holes in that theory. If Ricardo had killed them both, who killed him? Why were there no signs of violence? How could 3 adults vanish, leaving behind a spotless home and no clear crime scene? Weeks later, a rancher found charred clothing near the Pecos River, a blouse that matched Esperanza's, a work shirt like the ones Ricardo wore. But no blood, no DNA, no bodies. The trail went cold. Until August 12, 2010. Part 2, The Swamp Revelation, August 12, 2010. Nearly 22 years had passed. On the outskirts of Bottomless Lake State Park, about 30 miles northeast of Carlsbad, a team of wildlife researchers was collecting water samples from a shallow, rarely visited marshland. The drought that summer had lowered water levels dramatically, revealing sections of the swamp that hadn't been visible in decades. That's when a graduate student named Leah spotted something beneath a layer of algae and weeds. At first, she thought it was debris, an old tarp tangled in roots. But as they pulled at the edges, they saw what looked like cloth, then what looked like skin. The police were called, the scene was secured, and what they uncovered was no accident of time. Inside the tarp was a partially preserved body, bound with cord, wrapped in layers of plastic sheeting, and weighed down by rusted automotive parts. The hands were tied, and a single chain necklace engraved with the letter E lay against the ribcage. Identification: within days, the body was identified as Esperanza Delgado Mendoza. Dental records confirmed it. She had died from blunt force trauma to the head. The forensic team concluded she had been killed elsewhere, then buried in the swamp. The preservation of her body was attributed to the mineral-rich sediment and sealed wrapping, which had protected her remains from decay. It was a breakthrough, and a mystery all over again. Why only one body? What happened to Ricardo? And why had Esperanza been hidden so carefully, while Ricardo and David Morales were never found? The home revisited. Investigators re-examined the old Mendoza home, now occupied by new owners. One floorboard in the garage had been replaced. Beneath it, cadaver dogs signaled the presence of human decomposition. It was tested. The DNA matched Ricardo Mendoza, but there was no body, only trace remains. Police believe Ricardo was killed in the garage, possibly by Esperanza, possibly by someone else. But the biggest shock came when they checked the tax records. Because the land the swamp was on, where Esperanza's body had been found, had been leased in the late 1980s by a man named David Morales. Part 3. The Teacher's Secret. When investigators traced the old lease records for the swampy patch of land where Esperanza's body was found, they expected to find a hunter, a rancher, maybe a hermit. Instead, they found David Morales, the man believed to have been in a romantic relationship with Esperanza, and who had vanished just 2 weeks after she did. The lease, signed in 1986, listed Morales as the sole caretaker of a nearby utility shed registered as a research outpost. But no one had seen him there. No records of visits, no permits filed. And when police finally inspected the structure, they found it locked, sealed with rusted nails from the inside. What they found inside changed the entire scope of the case. Inside the shed dust, cobwebs, tools, and in the far corner an old metal filing cabinet. Inside it, photographs, letters, journals, dozens of handwritten notes, all in Morales' script. They spanned from 1985 to early 1988 and documented everything from school schedules to Esperanza's favorite books, to long rants about Ricardo Mendoza. One passage read, "He watches her even in silence. She says it's fear, not love. I asked her what she'd do if she could disappear." Another entry, dated March 10th, just 5 days before the disappearance. "She said yes, but she's scared. I told her I'd take care of everything. I meant it." The letter buried at the bottom of the cabinet was a sealed envelope addressed simply, "To be opened if I vanish." The letter, dated March 19th, 1988, the day Morales himself went missing, read like a confession. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this. He came home early. He was angry. He hit her. I didn't think. I acted. I wrapped him in the tarp and buried what I had to. She helped me carry him. But she wanted out. She wanted to tell someone. So I did what I thought I'd never do. I silenced her too." The letter ended without a signature, but the handwriting, verified by forensic analysts, was undeniably Morales. Where is David Morales? The confession confirmed what police had long suspected. David Morales killed Ricardo in a rage, then turned on Esperanza. But after that, silence. His apartment was left with the door unlocked. His car was found 70 miles away, abandoned. His bank account was never touched again. No credit card activity, no cell phone records. Some believe he fled to Mexico. Others think he took his own life in the desert. No body was ever found. But the story didn't end there. Because in late 2011, a man walking along a dry creek bed near Roswell found something tangled in the reeds. A second top, and inside another body. Part 4, The Second Top, November 3rd, 2011, nearly a year after Esperanza's remains were recovered. A local hiker named Joel Hart was walking his usual trail along a dried-up arroyo near Roswell when he spotted what he thought was an old tent or bundle of trash tangled in desert reeds. But as he got closer, he realized it was wrapped unnaturally tight, like it had been folded with purpose. The smell hit him next. He called the police immediately. When forensic teams arrived and carefully opened the tarp, they found a badly decomposed body, bones wrapped in disintegrating cloth and secured with the same plastic sheeting and cord used on Esperanza's body. And beneath the chest cavity, crumpled and nearly unreadable, was a work shirt stitched with a faded name, D. Morales. Confirmation at last dental records confirmed it. The second top contained the remains of David Morales. He hadn't run. He hadn't escaped. He'd been murdered. Just like Ricardo. Just like Esperanza. But by whom? And more importantly, when? The final twist autopsy results shocked investigators. Morales hadn't died in 1988, not even close. The coroner dated the time of death to somewhere between 1996 and 1998, almost a full decade after the Bennett case had officially gone cold. That meant one thing. David Morales had been alive all those years, which reopened an entirely new chapter in the case. Where had he been? Why had he stayed hidden? And who had finally killed him? One name emerges. Inside a rotted backpack next to Morales' body, police found a folded sheet of paper. It was a rental agreement listing a trailer in Las Cruces. The name of the leaseholder? Carmen Delgado, Esperanza's sister. Part 5. The Sister's Silence. Carmen Delgado had always seemed like a grieving sister, calm, collected, and deeply private. She'd reported her sister Esperanza missing. She'd sat through years of silence, She'd held a memorial mass when the body was finally found. But when detectives showed up at her door in late November 2011, with the rental lease in hand, her composure cracked for the first time in 2 decades. Carmen didn't deny knowing David Morales. In fact, she admitted he had stayed in her Las Cruces trailer for almost 9 years, hidden in plain sight. According to Carmen, David showed up at her door in April 1988, weeks after Esperanza vanished. He was bruised, thin, and terrified. He claimed Ricardo had attacked both of them and that he had killed Ricardo in defense. He begged Carmen to help him disappear. At first she said no, but when he broke down sobbing, saying, "I didn't mean to kill her," she realized there was more to the story. Carmen kept him hidden, bought groceries, delivered medicine, paid cash for the trailer. She said she did it out of guilt, because Esperanza had confided in her about Ricardo's abuse, and she'd done nothing. But it was what she said next that stunned investigators. The day. It ended. Sometime in late 1997, Carmen found David packing. He'd grown paranoid. He told her someone had seen him. He was leaving town for good. That night, Carmen said she drugged his tea with sleeping pills. And when he collapsed, she wrapped his body in a tarp, just like the others. She drove him out to the arroyo in the middle of the night, alone, and buried him. Her reason? He was a monster. I couldn't live with the truth anymore. She was arrested that night, charged with obstruction of justice, aiding and abetting a fugitive, and desecration of human remains. She pled guilty, and in court, for the first time, she read a statement aloud. "My sister died because I stayed quiet too long. David stayed free because I stayed loyal too long. I buried a body, but it was my silence that kept her in the ground." The case finally closes. The mystery of the missing couple in New Mexico had taken 22 years to solve. 3 people dead, 2 families shattered. One story that began with silence and ended with buried truths. Today, the area where Esperanza was found has been renamed Delgado Park, a tribute to victims of cold cases across New Mexico. Do you believe justice was served? What would you have done in Carmen's place? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe in truth, no matter how long it takes, like, subscribe and tap the bell, because some stories hide in the dark for decades, until someone finally listens.